Hello, everybody. Just jumping in. It's so good to see you. My name is Brad Wolf, the Executive Director of Reimagine, a nonprofit organization. Our mission, in the form of a question: how might we, meaning all of us here together, help all people face mortality, face loss, face adversity, and then channel the hard parts of life into meaningful action and growth? And we're going to explore. I mean, it's a big question. What does it mean to actually? Is it possible to channel what's hard into growth? Is that what does that take? What does that look like? What is growth? What is action? These are all big questions, and we're doing this work together. So, as you may or may not know, this session tonight is part of Reimagine's fall season, Grief, Growth, and Action. We've had hundreds of events really focused on actually the center of our mission, but thinking about what does that look like for all of us, and doing so with hundreds of events online, of which this is one, where community members mostly are leading these events to explore these questions. This is an event that Reimagine, the organizer of the overarching endeavor, is putting on our behalf because we wanted to host a question or a series right in the bullseye of this topic. I want to also thank our 2021 sponsors, without whom this would not be possible. I want to shout out specifically the McElhatton Foundation in Pittsburgh, in Western Pennsylvania, that introduced us through different channels to two of our featured speakers this evening. And we're just grateful for the community in Western Pennsylvania for the tremendous work that you've been doing to face what's hard in life and to grow, especially the examples we have with us. We wanted to spotlight a community and see what that's like. And so before we begin each session, we also read an intention that summarizes really the meaning and essence of what this Grief, Growth, and Action fall season for Reimagine is about. And I want to invite my colleague, Andy Engel, to read this intention that he had a hand in writing along with other staff members at Reimagine. If you wouldn't mind, you can close your eyes if you feel inclined, or read along with Andy, wherever you are, these words that set the intention for tonight's space.
There is no life without death, no love without loss, no growth without action. Let's move forward together, not in leaps and bounds, but in small, sweet steps. In the face of distance, illness, racism, and isolation, we are reimagining a changed world, kinder, slower, smaller. We are reimagining the giving and receiving of love, the cycles of loss and new beginnings, and what it means to be fully alive. This is how we move. This is how we transform. This is how we grow. This is how we take action.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you so much for reading that, and thank you all for leaning into this intention with us. I also want to recognize my colleague Zubin Desai, who's with us today, and my colleague Dara Cosberg, who's also supporting this experience. I see you out there as well, Dara. Thank you for being here, both of you. So, this is indeed the final episode of Phoenix Rising, a 5-part series exploring opportunities to emerge from the ashes and transform adversity, loss, and mortality into meaningful growth and action, as we've described. Guest speakers in the series, if you've been here throughout these other 4 episodes, are from and have been from diverse fields such as psychology and art and activism, and they've helped us dig into the scientific phenomenon known as trauma-related growth, or many folks call this post-traumatic growth, although it doesn't have to be after. It can be, trauma doesn't something you always, it's not necessarily a post thing we're talking about here. But we've been doing this through inspiring conversations and workshops. This session features 3 guests, all living and working in Western Pennsylvania, and they will each generously share insights into the possibility of living fully in the face of grief and trauma. Each one has a unique experience of loss and growth. We have Kelsey Brantley here with us. Kelsey is a nurse who cared for pregnant women while grieving her own experience of motherhood. As a hospital chaplain and minister, we have Reverend Richard Freeman. He sojourns with individuals and families by sharing his own story of growth after being orphaned as a teenager. And finally, we'll hear from a wonderful musician and humanist. I heard her already this evening. Sorry, one second here.
Mike Hoy.
I know Mike Hoy. Just seeing that I'm getting pinged for something that I am putting off, which is good. But Mike Hoy, we're going to introduce her incredible story from of activism and transformation, using music as a vehicle for that type of transformation today. So with that in mind, we are going to also let you know about this. It's near the end of the year at Reimagine, and we're really asking for your support. We just got notified of a board member who is willing to put up $25,000 challenge grant to help create free spaces like this. And so if you're here with us today, if you've contributed before, or if you haven't, apparently our development director had to rush off, put this beautiful little icon here that you can use on your phone to open up a portal for giving to Reimagine, to help us produce an ongoing free experiences for people of all backgrounds to participate in spaces like this. So I invite you to support the organization. Thank you so much in advance for that. I also want to thank our partners at City Asylum and Pediatric Palliative Care Coalition of Webster, Pennsylvania tonight, without whom really this event would not have been possible. They're co-presenters with us at Reimagine. All right, but why are we here? I want to stop the slideshow and get to your real faces here. There we go. Now I'm in a happy place. So first of all, I want to bring up, and maybe you can spotlight her, our dear Kelsey Brentley. Hi, Kelsey.
Hi, Brad.
So what we're going to do now is we're going to hear a little bit about Kelsey's story, and then we're going to ask some questions. And if you have questions along the way, please post them in the chat. So Kelsey, thank you for being here with us. You know, you have a unique story that for me has already opened my eyes to what it means to face something hard in ways that I hadn't conceived of before. Maybe you could just give us a brief sketch about kind of why you're here.
So like you said before, my name is Kelsey Brentley. I'm actually a nurse manager of the postpartum unit at West Penn Hospital. And when I think about loss or grief, I think about some of the things that I've encountered in my life. And of course, naturally, you think about death. And so, like most of us, I've seen my fair share of death, unfortunately, in patients and family members. I was actually planning a funeral of a loved one when I heard about this event. But I also think about loss. And so I think about my natural birth parents. My mother and father weren't married. And so I feel like you can possibly say that I lost my father to another marriage. And my mom, who had 2 children at the time, was a single mom. And unfortunately, she's still with us, but she succumbed to substance use disorder. And so a lot of my life, I was raised by my older brother. And then when I was 16 and he was 20, he was murdered. And so then I lost him. So, I think about grief in that way, but I also think about my life, and not just the things that happened to me, but things that I've lived. And so on November 12th of 2016, I gave birth to my first child at West Penn Hospital. But I had her, she was what they call a micro preemie, meaning she was born at 24 weeks of life and had a 30% chance of survival. And I didn't know that you could grieve a pregnancy. You think of people grieving pregnancies, you think about miscarriage and stillborns, but I just grieved the loss of experience. I didn't feel like I got a fair shake at pregnancy. I had what they call an anterior placenta. And so the placenta was in the front of my belly. And so if my baby moved or kicked, it was padded by like a pillow. So I never got to experience that with my first child. So I just grieved and I felt cheated, like I didn't get the full glimpse of pregnancy. And so I tried again. And I had another daughter 23 months later to the day on October 12th of 2018. And she too was premature, but this time 34 weeks and didn't spend as much time in the NICU, 15 days versus 136 days like my first daughter did. But all while this is going on, I still worked in the hospital and I still felt like I had a story to share with mothers if it was permitted. Outside of that, I also think about being a nurse and kind of losing, or being a nurse manager and losing your identity or your place in the community. Of course, I'm sure, when you start to become slightly successful in life and you do things, I was supposed to be a statistic, a single parent home, a mother who suffered from substance use disorder. I wasn't supposed to be much of anything. And to become a nurse and a nurse manager, you kind of have this imposter syndrome, like, am I really who I think I am or who they say I am? And so you struggle with that. And then your peers kind of look at you differently. Even the patients kind of view you as, they see you as a nurse or a nurse manager or someone that's a part of a system. They don't see you as a woman or a Black woman or an ally. They just see you, for your title and not who you are. And sometimes in that you lose your capability to be vulnerable. You feel like, okay, I've exposed these things to these people. They see me as one thing, but I know who I am. And so these walls go up. And if you're not careful, you won't be able to be vulnerable with your patients, with your family, with your loved ones. So, and that's a hard thing to be, like, to be that hard and not to be able to be, to lose the opportunity to be vulnerable. So those are just some examples of loss and grief that I've experienced in my life, but I'm glad that I'm triumphant through it all.
So, the one, what's interesting in the opening statements that I read about grieving the idea of motherhood by not having the full experience of motherhood, yet you experienced this grief you described before that period of your life through the really horrific experiences of your family members who've gone through, those close to you. I'm curious, the feeling, the experience, the feeling that you had that let you know that this is grief about the experience piece, that you weren't able to have the full experience of pregnancy, that experience of grief versus others' experiences of grief. Is there something similar about the emotion of grief that you experience across these different types of experiences, or is each one so different? How did you know it was grief that you were feeling?
I think the experiences are a little bit different. When you talk about like natural death, even if it's unexpected death, like I said, my brother's murder, definitely wasn't expecting that. But to grieve a pregnancy, even now at the tender age of 35, I feel like I have one more try in me. Maybe I could try one more time, because it's small things. Like when I left the hospital, I didn't leave with a baby like everybody else does. Well, not everybody, but mostly everybody else anticipates. And so in the back of my mind, I feel like one more time I can try. You don't get that chance when you have natural death. So I feel like, that grief was different because you can try again and not so much with death.
It's interesting. I just had this conversation the other day with someone who had a seizure disorder throughout his childhood. And it went for many years until he was maybe 18, and then it was cured. And you would think, wow, it's cured. But now he feels so much grief for all the childhood that he missed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just interesting thinking about what it means to grieve. And, we think about loss and grief, and we think about different types of experiences, but we don't often, in our culture, it seems like we think about certain types of grief. But I think you're opening us up to the idea that grief can come in all these different forms. That what is loss? What is grief? And so I think that's very powerful as an idea. And even this case, I myself, that's what I'm saying. I would not have recognized that and had the empathy for a situation like that until I learned about your experience. So thank you so much for being vulnerable. I also wanted to say, Kelsey, you're a native of Pittsburgh, and you serve as the nurse manager at a postpartum unit, right, at the Allegheny Health Network's Western Penn Hospital. And you're also a certified breast feeding counselor with a passion for providing quality care for women and infants. And as you're enrolled in this in a master's program pursuing a degree in nurse leadership and administration, I'm curious, you talk about triumphing through this all. You're doing so much to make a difference for all these populations now. Where do you see, when we think about this word growth or action, you talked about being able to share your story forward. How do you see those words kind of relating to your experience of these hard things that you faced across your life and yeah?
I feel like if I can share my story with one mom and it helps one mom, when I came back to work after having my first daughter, I would frequently run into moms who had their babies at 25 weeks, 26 weeks. And if they allowed me, I would share my story. And if I can give them a glimmer of hope, then it makes me feel like none of this was in vain. I always feel like we go through things not just for ourselves. And you don't always understand why you go through it until you meet someone else and you realize that you are helping them through a tough time as well. So it's like a little bit of selflessness that you have to take with that, and just realize you're helping someone else.
And later on, what we're going to share are some of the scientific underpinnings. In session number 2 of this series, we heard from Dr. Richard Tedeschi, who was the person who coined this term post-traumatic growth. And I'll share later one of the things he talks about as one way through which we are able to grow. And there's really 2 that I'm seeing here that he said are best practices, but you've come to them naturally to do them. One is to share your story, which we're in a safe space, and you've been able to do that with it seems like a number of different people in your life. That's powerful, as you describe. And then the other is acts of service, especially through the area of the hard things you're facing. So it seems like you were already working in healthcare, and then you had this healthcare experience yourself so what was that like? The fact that you've been on both sides, maybe that's what you're saying, how you can relate now to patients differently. I'm wondering how that's changed your relationship to your work.
It has changed me, I believe, for the better. It makes you walk into a room differently. It makes you posture yourself differently. It makes you be careful of your word choice. Just things. I noticed that when I meet moms of premature babies right after delivery, I tell them it's not your fault. And the break that you can see in them when that occurs, because as a mom, you want to attribute something to yourself as to why this happened to you. So I feel like once you're on the other side and you're not a healthcare provider, but you're a patient, you see healthcare totally differently.
Well, it's so powerful, right? To be able to, it's kind of even what we're getting from you right now, right? The newfound empathy for an experience. And hopefully by, I think what we're trying to do together right now is seeing that all these experiences are so different, like you described. The different types of grief are different. The different experiences that led to them are different. But there also is a commonality when we go through what's hard in life. And so having that empathy for those hard situations and knowing what it takes to go through them, but then how we can talk about them and use that experience to help other people, that's something maybe we can all share. And so with that, we're going to come back to you, Kelsey, in a group discussion in a few minutes. But I want to welcome Reverend Richard Freeman. Through his ministry, he's been a bivocational servant. He's led the chaplaincy program at Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh for 23 years, while concurrently serving as a senior pastor of the Resurrection Baptist Church in Braddock, Pennsylvania. Reverend Freeman is intimately involved in the struggle for a living wage for all workers, ecological equity, and police accountability. His current interests lie in the area of restorative justice and equitable treatment of formerly incarcerated citizens. And Reverend, in your forthcoming book, sounds like you're going to be sharing observations along the lines that we're talking about tonight.
Right.
Observations around pain and healing with grievers, and how your story intersects. Maybe you could share a little bit about, your story for us to kind of contextualize you. But just to say, first of all, thank you so much for being here. So appreciate you. And as everyone will hear in a second, you have an incredible voice, sir.
Thank you so much. I asked for you to rein me in. I am a Baptist preacher, and I could wax on forever. So rein me in as you need to. I resonate with Kelsey's story very, very powerfully. And there's a dimension often talked about in the grief journey that people that looked like Kelsey and me, that we never understood as grief. It was just part of the journey. It just sucked. We just experienced life as Black folk in America, and it just sucked. We didn't call it grief. It just sucked. And we got older and we matured and we went to the academy and we learned words like grief. We learned words like loss. And now we can apply those words. But before we went to the academy, we had the experience, and fortunately, many of us, at least I'm old enough to be Kelsey's dad, believe it or not. I had close community where we were nurtured in those communities and we were cared for in those communities. And I needed it. My dad and my mom, my dad hit my mom once when I was a 6-year-old kid, and my mom left within 24 hours and gave me the option. She said, "Kid, you can stay with your dad or you can come with me, but I'm not staying here to get hit by a man ever again." And within 24 hours, she was gone, and I went with her. My brother and I, we left. My mother, at 6 years old, parted our family. My dad died 5 years later, and I was 11 years old. 4 years later, my mom died. I left my hometown and moved in with my grandma, who my mom and grandma didn't have a really good relationship, but that was the only adult that would take us in. And I went and moved with my grandma. I left my hometown. So I grieved the loss. I was in my junior year of high school. And so I moved away and lost all my buddies and friends and moved to Savannah, Georgia. That's where I graduated high school. Off to college I went, found a great life. At about 12 years of that, we got a phone call. I'm here in Pittsburgh. Got a phone call that my brother had been found dead. He was only 38 years old. I didn't know he was sick. And only call I knew, it's my only sibling had died. 2 days ago, my brother would have been 34 years old. My brother would have been 64 years old. He was 38 when he died. So I've had that pain of death. Then I add to that the journey, and I don't call it pain, the journey of being a Black man in America. I walk in my hospital every day dressed to the nines. Why? Because that's how I was professionally trained. And I still walk on elevators and white women still grab their purses. And I'm going, what the hell? I'm a chaplain, the least likely guy to hurt you. And yet you look at my Black face and you think I'm gonna hurt you. Do you think that doesn't produce grief in the life of me? I can't imagine Kelsey job as a nurse. I can imagine, I can tell you what I am, and I'm not a clinician. And they look at me suspectly. I can imagine when she comes in with a syringe trying to poke one of their children, and they go, wait, hold on, wait a minute. Who the hell are you? If that's not a grief response, I don't know what a grief response looks like. That's part of our journey. But I like Maya Angelou in Still I Rise. I get up every morning, I still got a good old smile on my face because I'm not the sum of what anybody thinks of me. I'm the sum of what I think of me. And I'm a strong, God-loved human being. And I get up every day knowing that reality, regardless of my pain. And I don't discount the pain. The pain is real. It hurts. It hurts. But I still know that there's some resolve in me. I'm trained as a therapist as well, so I use this in my therapeutic work. We talk about it in therapy. We talk about resilience. Yeah, I think this when we talk about transforming and growing from grief, she talks about resilience. What have we given people as tools to grow? And as a man of faith, I got a whole lot of hats here, Brad. So when I put on my theological hats, one of my biggest arguments, if you have a faith that is not utilitarian, get rid of it. I don't care what faith that is. I'm a devout Christian, but whatever your faith is, if it doesn't work for you, get rid of it. It should help you. And if it doesn't, get rid of it. Find something that helps. Even if it's atheism. If atheism helps you, go for it. But it should help you. And so that's what buoys me through the journey. It motivates me through the journey.
So first of all, what just who wouldn't want to be, have you as any of these roles? I mean, what you're sharing is just so powerful and so inspiring and also heartbreaking on the one hand, but so the way you're putting words to this experience and what you talked about even at the beginning, right? The idea that you were able to put words to this experience, and I'm curious about language because it sounds like you have a book coming out. You obviously. As you said, I mean, I would have to maybe rein you in, although I'm so happy to have you go because it's just wonderful. This idea of language around this, what is the power of language? And when you work with patients, and teach, is it important to know what these is the terminology important and helpful for us to think about our own experience? How does that shape us?
Let me frame it in this context, Brad. I tell my team that I work with that I suffer from musical Tourette's, and that's because I like to sing about everything. I got a musical genre that is very broad, and it's the feelings that's more important than anything. What are you feeling? What can you express? Your words may not be exact. In fact, language is an inexact science in and of itself. So the moment I say a word, your connotation of that word may put a chasm between you and me. So sharing what you're feeling is paramount. Sharing how you are feeling is paramount. And I have to come to terms with your feelings are more legitimate than the words you put to the feelings. And so I know as a student of psychology, as an economist as well, as a theologian, language is an inexact science. It's our best opportunity, but the words can get in the way. That's an old song. Sometimes words get in the way. You don't know that song, Brad.
I want to know it.
But so the language is not so important as what are we communicating? Because if you understand, well, you don't understand. Let me just say it. I integrated schools when I was in 4th grade in my hometown. Okay, put that in context. Okay, 4th grade. I integrated schools in my hometown. All right. When you understand what I had as secondhand books, we wouldn't find those kind of books in used bookstores today. Okay. So the type of materials I had to begin my academic formation were substandard at best. So if you were waiting on me to develop the vocabulary to articulate to you what I was feeling, I would be deficient at doing it at that time. Why? Because I wasn't adroit at doing that. Now I have spent a whole lot more time in the academy. I've learned a lot. I've read a lot more. I'm better at use of language. But even in the use of language, that's deficient. Why? Because a lot of people don't know some of the words my kids get on my case now. All who are college educated, some of them have master's degrees. I said, Dad, tone down your language. I said, why? You're talking above my head. I've gotten used to that language. But I say all that to say language can get in the way. Let's hear feelings. Let's hear your heart. Let's share with me. What are you going through? And I do that in my, I'll give you a quick story and I'll try to get out of the way. I had a case in my hospital and I did what I used to call my Walmart routine where very few families ever come and ask for a chaplain. So in order to do my work, I go knock on doors just to say, hi, I exist. So I knocked on this particular door, family of a Jewish tradition. I knocked on the door, said hi. They said hi. Do you need me? No. Okay, I disappeared. A couple of days later, the nurse called me. She said, Pastor Freeman, Mom wants to see a psychologist, but I think you can help her. I said, cool, I'll give it a shot. Went to her door. Saw Mom. She'd segregated herself from her child. You know anything about a bone marrow transplant? We sabotage, we annihilate the immune system of a person in order to put in transplanted cells. Well, we annihilated this kid's immune system to prepare him to receive a transplanted cell. Well, the transplanted cells have become contaminated. That's a death sentence. And so this mom is crying her eyes out. She looks over her shoulders when she sees me come in the room. She says, I asked for a psychologist, but I guess you will do. Then she stopped crying just for a second. She says, but I don't believe in Jesus Christ. I don't believe he's the Son of God. I don't believe he's the Messiah. I says, well, I believe in Jesus Christ. I believe he's the Son of God. I believe he's the Messiah. Can we talk? And she broke into a smile. And we talked that particular day for 2 hours. And then she said at the end of the meeting, do you have some time tomorrow for an old Jewish lady? And she wasn't that old. And I said, sure. And I met with her probably 45 minutes every day for the next 4 days until we sent her son home on hospice. You see, it wasn't the language that got in the way, and I refused to let the language get in the way. It was her heart, and her heart was, my baby's dying. And I walked with her through the journey. And that's the privilege we get to do, is walk with people through the journey. And that's what I've been doing most of my life.
Thank you so much for that. It's just a gorgeous example and a painful example, you know what I mean, at the same time of how love can triumph in these micro moments, but the pain you have to go through to get there, you know, shouldn't be there, but it seems like it's been an inextricable part of, obviously, your journey, and as you mentioned, I'm sure Kelsey's journey, and Koi's, and so many people. How, given your experience, how do you face adversity and channel it?
Yeah, I've over the last few months, I've come to a realization. First and foremost, some things are just is. It's a part of the human condition. For example, this may be controversial for some. We're never going to cure racism. Racism is a human heart issue, and that's above our pay grade. And even though I'm engaged in the work of social justice, I used to think we could cure racism. No, ain't going to happen. But we can fight fervently against what racism does, or any of the other isms for that matter. And that's why I'm engaged in that work here in Pittsburgh, is to fight against the results of all those other isms. The cure is between that person and whomever they define as their divine one. That's how that is cured. I can't cure it. So once I've released myself from thinking I could cure it, boy, it got a lot easier. I only have to do what Michael Jackson told us to do. I'm starting with the man in the mirror. I'm asking him to change his ways. Okay? No message can get any clearer. If you want to make the world a better place, just look at yourself and make that, you know the rest, make that change. And so that's what I try to do. And so if I focus on me making the change I need to make, I can wake up, because I can work on this one. I can do a doggone thing about Brad. As nice a guy as Brad is, I've met you for an hour or so. I can't change you. But that guy in that mirror every day, I can change.
Well, thank you, Reverend, for the whatever these changes that you've been making are is what we're getting here. You know, the culmination of your life at this juncture, and it is something that honestly is transformative, and I think does have the power, obviously, to change me and the other people on this call, and has changed. We can tell so many people, and wow, look at how that starts. I guess starting with you and how it's trickling and hopefully flowing out in a deeper stream, and as I'm sure it is, and you know, part of, again, and we'll share this, what you know, they say it's science, right? But it's really ancient wisdom. How do you grow through trauma? Well, you need to know that it's possible. You know, that's part of it. It's knowing that that's one of the first ways, knowing that it's possible to grow after something hard. And I think, you know, your example is just one for all of us to see so clearly. And thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you.
All right. And so we'll turn back to you as well in a couple minutes in a group conversation we'll have, and we'll also take questions from the audience as well. So get those ready. If anyone has any that are coming up, please don't hesitate to use the chat, and we'll try to turn to those as well. But now I want to introduce to you our final panelist this evening, Khoi. Mai Khoi is the first exiled musician in residence at City of Asylum in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. She is a Vietnamese artist and activist who rose to stardom in 2010 after winning the Vietnam Television Song and Album of the Year awards. And that's where things took, you know, that's what we're going to talk about in a second. What happened then? Today, right, she lives in Pittsburgh with the support of City of Asylum, an organization that builds a just community by protecting and celebrating creative, free expression. They provide sanctuary to endangered writers from around the world. So Khoi, maybe you could share with us, first of all, welcome.
Thank you for having me here.
Maybe you can share with us, Khoi, you know, what brought you to City of Asylum? I mean, to be in asylum after this high point that we were talked about winning an album of the year. How do you go from that to this journey?
Yeah, I just came to the US 2 years ago, so I'm not asylum yet. I'm still an artist in residency at the City of Asylum, Pittsburgh. I'm having the O1 visa, which is the very special artist visa to stay and perform in the US. Yeah, I'm from Vietnam, and my name is Mai Khoi, and you can call me Khoi, but not Mai. I was born in a family of teachers, and my father was a music teacher. He taught me how to write songs, play guitar, and sing. So I wrote my first song when I was 11 years old, and I won some voices and composition competition, and I played keyboard in the wedding band with my father when I was 12 years old. And I was always dreaming about being a pop star, during my childhood. So I finished high school and moved to Saigon to build my music career. In 2010, I won Song of the Year award, which is the biggest award for composer and singer songwriter in Vietnam. And I became a darling of the States. I was invited to sing in their ceremonies, and I was invited to perform, to talk on TV and radio all the time. I had a lot of fans and shows and money, but you know what? I was not really happy completely. Even as a pop star, I still, like, they censored me every time I perform. Because in Vietnam, artists have to submit their work to the government to ask for permission before publishing or performing in public. And I always felt insulted every time they censored me. The artist inside me couldn't stand the censorship anymore. I hate the censorship system. And I found a way to fight against the censorship system. I organized underground shows and exhibitions with another independent artist without asking for permission from the government. And that's the way I fight against the censorship system. And then I went to protest. And I nominated myself for the National Assembly election as an independent candidate. But because of my activism, I was banned from singing in public. I was rejected from the ballots. I was evicted from my house. I lost a friend, and I was detained a few times and under surveillance all the time. The police threatened me nonstop until I was forced to leave my country at the end of 2019. So I had 1 year residency at SHIM NYC in New York. And then I was Artist Protection Fund Fellow at Pittsburgh University in 2020. And now I'm artist residency at City of Asylum, Pittsburgh. I'm doing a project called Bad Activist. This is an autobiographical multimedia performance where I tell my story with my music, my songs. Yeah. And I try to start my life, like kind of restart my life from the beginning here in the new country. Wow. That's why I'm here.
Wow, I mean, again, a heartbreaking story about what it means to have freedom of speech, to be censored and have to go through that, but then the conviction and of your heart to stand up for what is right, no matter the consequences, is a very powerful example to us. Thank you for staying true to art and to your voice and your heart. Thank you. Um, I'm curious because we're going to hear, maybe you're going to share with us, right? Are you going to be able to share a little bit of video perhaps? Is that true? That brings to this to life for us a little bit, and maybe in setting that up, um, tell me if this is part of the video. I'm curious. For someone who doesn't know, I mean, were you talking about the government? Is it or what was being censored that that they were trying to censor you around? Is it just, or is it just the process of censorship period? What kinds of things get you censored?
The way they work in Vietnam is not clear. They just very depends on the feeling of the censors. So artists have to submit their work for the censors from the culture department. Like before I want to release my album, I have to submit my music, my lyrics, my image, my pictures, all of the content of the album. Submit that to the censors, and they will give us the permission to release the album. If they don't like anything in your lyrics, they will cut it, or they will not allow you to release the album. It was the same with a painting or a book. And the performance. So before we are allowed to perform in public in Vietnam, we have to do the dress rehearsal for the censors. They came to see you perform in the dress rehearsal, and they will tell you which one they like, which one they don't like, and you have to follow their opinion. Otherwise, they will not give you the permission to perform. Yeah, and they censored me every time. Like censored how I dress, censored my lyrics. Even they censored how my hair look like. Yeah, and it's really hurt. As an artist, I couldn't stand it. I know many artists don't want to be censored. Art and artists shouldn't be censored. They didn't do anything wrong, and they didn't harm people while they've been censored. But some artists in my country, they have to deal with the censorship system just for easier to work, easier to live. Otherwise, they will forced to leave the country like me, or banned from performing in public like me.
Wow. Do you want to? Would you mind sharing with us this video that we have?
Yes. Before sharing the video, I just want to talk about the song. The song is called Landing. It's one of the songs in Bad Activist Performance. I wrote this song when I lost a friend. She's not died, she's still alive. But I lost a friend because she used to be my best friend. We used to be very close to each other. We share everything. We share our love, we share our life, we share our songs. We support each other a lot. But because of my activism, she betrayed me. And she told our friends that they should stay away from me. So I lost a friend in that way. But, I always use the difficulty to process, to turn the difficulty to my art, so I can live with my art, with the real emotions. yeah, real emotions have always been like material and the motivation of my art creation.
Wow.
I'm happy to share the video now.
Yes, thank you. I mean, obviously, Reverend, what you were saying before about emotions obviously resonates so strongly with what Coy is saying right now.
Từng là bạn thân của tôi, giờ là an ninh của tôi. Người bán thông tin của tôi, ru rê bạn bè xa lìa tôi. Từng là rất thân của nhau, từng chia cho nhau yêu thương, từng sáng cho nhau niềm đau em bộn bề trong từng câu hát. Cho rằng tôi u mê hoang đường và cho rằng tôi là mối nguy hại cho những ai còn đang gần tôi. Tránh xa tôi ra người nói, tránh xa tôi ra nếu không muốn thân tàn mà. Em thích làm chú cừu nhỏ, ngoan ngoan ngoãn ngoan ngoan ngoan, chưa bao giờ muốn phản kháng khi chứng kiến chuyện trái ngang. Chưa bao giờ em tự hỏi mình đang đúng hay đang sai. Sau những lần bạn bè ái ngại, em cũng chẳng còn thiết chi ai. Vì cuộc đời không còn quá dài, sao em cứ giả vờ đóng kịch mãi? Sao em cứ hoài lại nhải? Sao em cứ giả vờ đóng kịch mãi? Don't tell me how to live my life. Don't tell me what is wrong or right. Don't tell me anything. You better stop giving me advice. Đừng bao giờ khuyên tôi phải sống cuộc đời như em. Đừng bao giờ bắt tôi phải sống cuộc đời nhạt hèn. Đừng bao giờ khuyên tôi phải thành công như em. Sống lập lờ, sống mơ hờ, tiến thân trên những cơ hội là những thứ tôi chưa quen.
Wow.
Can you hear the video well?
Perfectly. It was so powerful. It was so powerful. And I see Reverend Freeman, and I'll just do the same thing. And let's see other people out there. We can get a little, yeah, we get some good handshakes out there. I guess that's how we maybe do it on these Zooms. But that was so powerful, honestly. And what an expression of the pain of what this type of loss that you're experiencing. And you can imagine, given your story, just how screwed up it is, you know, to face this in your life, and then thinking about America, as we have in the other conversations, thinking about our country here and the histories of how we treat people, and oppress one another, and then I guess why we're here together, about what does it look like to channel that into something. What do we do? What do we do in the face of these things? Maybe you could also share with us, before we open up this discussion, you know, now you're at City of Asylum. Tell us a little bit about that. Like what, just for those of us who don't know this process that you're part of, what is City of Asylum for you?
City of Asylum provides me a very beautiful house to live in Pittsburgh. And they have a venue, a bookstore where I can come to work, to create song, play jamming, music with another musicians, and perform. Yes. Last month I just performed in City of Asylum. Yeah, that was a very successful performance of the first draft of Bad Activist. City of Asylum really mean to me. I love City of Asylum, and I love the community around me. I love my neighborhood. Is always supports and helpful, and I can receive a lot of love from people around me.
Wow. It's just to say, I see Abby from City of Asylum, I think, here, and I assume you were there last night. But just to say, what an incredible work you're doing, and thank you so much. Now getting a chance to be with Coy here and to see what you're producing, how important that is, to provide asylum. Not even. I had no idea. I'm sure I must be so, I'm sure people are more aware in many cases than I am, but I'm sure there's so many people who are unaware of what's happening in Vietnam around this and the types of asylum that is necessary for folks, and how to protect freedom of speech and be able to share these stories, because if we can't share them, then what happens? And so, Coy, last thing, I guess, now that song you just shared with us was very different, right, from the kind of music you were making in Vietnam, or the same?
I actually changed the style of the music when I make Bad Activist, because in Bad Activist I'm telling my story, the story of my life, which is the journeys of a lot of different events and different emotions. So I created a new way to compose songs, and it can transfer the atmosphere of the events that happened in my life and make the audience immerse into my emotional journey. If they watch the show, they will feel the lost when I'm lost. They will feel angry when I'm angry. They will feel hopeful when I feel hopeful again. And yes, I think because I was forced to leave my country, I lost, I can't see my family. I can't go back to my own country. Can't see my friends. That kind of lost. But in this new country, my artistic practice has grown since I started to create this project. And I still able to create art and music with my new artist friends in Pittsburgh, and I have my new audience here.
Well, you have your new audience here as well, here. And so we look forward to supporting your journey and to getting your story out there. And this is for us, the beginning of that. So thank you so much for what you've brought to us, and your vulnerability and storytelling through self-expression is really, really powerful. And now I do want to open it up, to back to Kelsey and to Richard. Reverend Freeman. Um, I'm wondering, really, I'm just curious what's coming up for you. I just saw so many, kind of the breadth and the relationship between these stories that we're hearing, but the differences just feel so powerful. And Kelsey, or if you're there, maybe starting with you, Reverend Freeman had a hypothesis about your experience as a female Black practitioner, nurse practitioner in your field, and just maybe you could speak to that, and then to what you're kind of thinking in general here.
It's a double-edged sword. Sometimes I feel like, there's already a lack of trust in the healthcare system with African Americans. And so that's what I meant by, like, sometimes you're seen as your title and not who you are as a person. And then there's the other side of it where people don't even acknowledge that you're a medical professional. So, because I'm African American or because I'm young, people refuse to believe that I'm the manager, or they refuse to believe that I'm the nurse. I've been thought of as a nursing assistant or the housekeeper. And so it kind of goes both ways, where you feel like these people really don't see me. They see a title or a uniform and not me as a human.
Can I chime in?
Please chime away.
They don't just see a title, they see their self-definition, and they refuse to see my humanity, and they refuse to see your humanity. And so they've gotten a definition. I finished a book not too long ago by Isabel Wilkinson called Caste. It is one hell of a book. Everybody in all of humanity should read it. It cuts across every culture. And I found a new way of understanding even racism, that racism is a form of caste. And how it plays out in America, racism is the caste system. And that helped me a lot to understand it is no different in America than it was in Nazi Germany, no different than it was in the subcontinent of India, no different than it is in Vietnam. It is one powerful book. So if you don't take anything from what I've said tonight, go buy the book and read it. It is phenomenal, and it will change the way we think and understanding each other as human beings.
Thank you for that recommendation. Echo it. And so, Reverend, I mean, when you then think about Koi's story and you hear, Kelsey's story, just what is your reflection on these kind of range of stories we're hearing? What is the commonalities that we can find in this about what it means to, channel grief into action or growth, and what it means to be human?
Yeah. Wow. I think what I love about your stories is a concept that I learned in the academy, but I've seen it all my life. It's called resilience. Both of you young ladies said, I ain't taking it anymore, and you ain't gonna keep me down. I love Maya Angelou's poem, Still I Rise. Both of you ladies exemplify it. And I love you for it. You go rock it, keep rocking it, Don't let anybody tell you you can't, because you can. Will it be tough sometimes? Heck yeah, it's going to be tough. There's an axiom I use with my congregation. You either in trouble, on your way to trouble, or just got out of trouble. That's called life. Keep moving. Because that's what life is going to throw at you. You're going to either be in it on your way to it or just got out of it. That's what life throws at us. Now, we have one option. We have two options. We either give into it or we keep moving. And I just appreciate both of you. You've kept moving through some very tough stuff.
Thank you. Something that hit home for me, what you said, is that unfortunately, once again, in our community, it's not grief, it's not loss. It is what it is.
It's is.
And you got to keep going, and you're not allowed to grieve, and you're not allowed to be sad, and don't you dare go to counseling or a therapist. You just have to you just have to deal with it. And it's not until someone else helps you to explain. I've seen a comment that Andy put in and said that this is called post-traumatic growth. And then one of the, I guess, fruits of post-traumatic growth is spirituality. And I'm thinking to myself, well, what else do I have? What else? How else do I hold on? So it's just interesting to learn that, like, the things that we've gone through in life, they have a name now. And we just thought it was part of the journey.
And a lot of you get to peek in on a conversation with some Black folk right now. I'm gonna let you say it. You get to get some private information, but we've been named a whole lot, but nobody's heard us. We would call the N-word, we would call colored folk, we would call darky, we would call Black, we would call Afro-American, we would call African-American, and we still haven't been heard in this country. We've been named a whole lot of stuff, but we haven't been heard yet. I look forward to the day when we are heard. I don't mean pitied, just heard.
Boy, I want to turn it to you around, what it means to be heard.
It means to honor the reality of my experience. There's much going on in our culture right now around the issue of just being honest about what racism has done in our country. And we want to deny it ever happened. We want to deny it ever happened. Racism happened, y'all. I wrote a piece for Penn a couple of days ago, just got posted. I hearkened what happened in Brunswick, Georgia. Brunswick, Georgia is 35 miles from my hometown. It was a lynching. It had very much the similitudes of what happened in the 20s and beyond, okay? They used to have lynchings and they took pictures of them and sent those pictures out. That's not conjecture, that's a matter of historical record. And that's exactly what they did in Brunswick, Georgia. Unfortunately for those folk who got convicted, those weren't stills, it was video. It was because of the video they got convicted. If they had had stills, they would have used those stills to get those guys off. That's the reality of how I live in this country. That's our story. Understand it. This is a caste system that's designed, okay? Don't get me to preaching, don't get me to preaching. But when you get to the 13th Amendment, this design that says slavery is abolished in this nation except for punishment for a crime. Now you understand, get an inkling why there's disproportionate policing in Black neighborhoods. Because we want to keep slaves. Do not miss it, my brothers and sisters. The penal system in our country is a de facto slavery system. We need to grieve that.
Yeah, I'm going to come back to you, Reverend, because I'm curious, maybe for each of you, this idea of grieving.
Mm-hmm.
For each of you who have lost. How does grieving help you? We need to grieve, right? We know we need, but why do we need to grieve? Because I think that's a really important point, right? People think, why do we need to grieve? I mean, it's kind of the fundamental question of some of the work that we're doing, but why? Coy, I mean, do you want to chime in and share for you about grief? Like why feel that? Why experience it? Why set aside time or a place for yourself to reflect and feel those feelings and that experience and name it?
Yes, I think because we are human beings, so we have to feel happy, we have to feel sad, we have to feel grieving, and that's very natural. The point is we use that in the way negative or positive. like for me, the sadness or grieving, I think that is one of the beauty of life. And many artists use that to create art. I think artists cannot create art without being grieving. And I think another person who have the hearts, they have to feel the same, and they will do another way to live with that, to keep going.
Thank you, Coy. I mean, it's such a, I mean, I just, perfectly shared. Kelsey, do you have a reaction to grief in your experience, and how, either a reaction to what Coy shared, or how it's moved you, or how it's, what it's for you?
I think that she brought up an excellent point, that it's important to feel those feelings. I'm not necessarily sure that I have actually grieved. Sometimes you'll see the fruit of my pain, like anger or irritability, or what they would call a trauma response. But I don't think, especially as a woman, and a woman that wears many hats, you don't really get a chance to grieve. You just keep going. And then, you see things like, oh, people have mental breakdowns, or they had, something traumatic happens to them even more. But I don't think that you get an opportunity to grieve in today's world.
Reverend Freeman.
I think grieving is such a natural response to any human condition. In my sacred writings in John 11:35, there's the shortest verse in all of the Bible. It says Jesus wept. And I use that text so many times, and it affirms for me my grieving. And in my sacred space, if God can cry, so can I.
Mm-hmm.
And think about that half a minute. If God can cry, what am I being so tough and bad and strong and thinking I can crunch it all by myself and I'm all that and I'm Superman and I can do it? Oh, give it a break. I need to cry. I need to let out some of this stuff. And as I say quite often, it's not that I perfected it, because I still got some things I need to grieve and things I need to get off my chest. But at least I have the intellectual assent to know that is normative. And I encourage people all the time, get what you need when you need it. In our community, Kelsey's right on. People tell me, oh, don't go to no therapist, man. You act like you're crazy. I tell them, get out of here. We all need to talk to somebody. And if you're not the one I can talk to, then I'm going to find something. If I got to pay for it, I'm going to talk to somebody. Okay. And that's just the way it's going to be, because I need to talk to somebody and get this stuff off of my chest. And I need to be heard in a non-judgmental fashion. And if that's a grief around the loss of a job, is that the grief for loss of a child, that's someone who's been incarcerated, if I don't care who it is, if it's someone, whatever it is, if I need to talk to someone, I'm going to find that someone. If it's not in my immediate constellation of friends and family, well, I got to pay a therapist and I'll be there.
In this work we've been doing, I've been trying to read as much as I can about these topics of grief and this idea of channeling it. That's kind of, that's part of our mission, and why we came to this idea. And Kelsey, it's so interesting and also painful what you're sharing with us, and so true, that it strikes me that there's three options for us. Reverend, you shared, right? We all have to face stuff. Obviously, some things should not be that way. The things we should be able to correct in our culture that we haven't yet, and maybe we never will. But we need to keep fighting for those things. But in the one response is to keep that inside of us, right? And maybe our culture sometimes makes us keep it in. And we know from reading, and from experiencing it, if we do that, that's harmful to ourselves. That creates harm in physical, like literally physically, like you talked about mental breakdowns, but disease, loss of life. I mean, keeping it in. The second option we have is to then know, we have to let it out. Okay, so if we're going to let it out, how do we let it out? Well, there's one way, which is we let it out in ways that hurt other people and hurt ourselves. And if you think about a lot of the pain and the way we treat each other, it feels like it's maybe coming from that place too. Pain begets pain. We inflict it on others. And then it strikes me, then there's this third option, right? If we're going to, how do we let it out? How do we channel it? I mean, this is my question to, if we, one option is hold it in, one option is to let it out in ways that are detrimental to ourselves and to others. What is this whole other constellation of ways, what we can do with it? What can we do with that pain? That's kind of the question that we're trying to pose as an organization. It's like, what can we do? I mean, it seems like there's many things, and it seems like you're doing, Kelsey, to say, I mean, and I'm not, it feels like we should create containers for grief, right? Spaces, people to hold that space, to affirm, to give you and the healthcare workers, but Black people, to affirm that we should have these spaces. You shouldn't have to carry that burden as a woman, all these different aggregated things, but also just to say to you, I mean, in hearing your story, just to reflect back to you, I just see, whatever, and maybe it doesn't feel good inside all the time, but what you're doing in your career is so powerful in your life, and what you've committed to doing is in some ways channeling something, it seems like to me, in a really powerful way that's like just you being here tonight is affected us so deeply. And so if in some ways that's part of how you're expressing this pain through what you're providing others, I mean, in my mind, that, and I think in our organization, what we're trying to say is that's an expression of grief, but a channeled expression in the same way that Koi is making art. You're making that with your life.
I never looked at it that. Thank you.
Yes. Let's create, after we have the sadness or we have the grief, let's do something. Let's use that feeling to turn it into the positive things. Yeah. To me, I perform with the grief. Yeah.
So Koi, I guess I am curious, Koi. Here you are in America. You left Vietnam to come to asylum here. And you hear Reverend Freeman talking about America, a land of the free.
Yes.
And in a second, we're going to have you play a song to close us out. Just everyone, I want to, a sneak preview. We're going to ask Koi to actually play live for us as we close out the session in a second. But Koi, what is your just reaction to coming to America and then hearing this? What is this? What do you learn? What do you take away from this? I'm just, yeah.
Yes, when I left my country, Vietnam is a one-party state, a kind of dictatorship there, and we always under controlled by the government. And I thought when I came here to the US, I will have more freedom. Yes, and I have. I am. Yeah, I feel very free. I'm feel free to speak, feel free to perform. I feel free to talk, to create it here in the US. But also, I feel free to be beaten on the street. I feel free to evict in my house in the middle of the pandemic. Yes, another kind of censorship is happening here in the US. I could see it. And it's not make me sad. It just it just make me want to fight more to have the better world in everywhere I live, in every society I live.
I would simply say I use this, I speak in idioms a lot, and one of the idioms I have is grief is not a destination, it's a journey. Yesterday marked the 46th anniversary of my mother's death. And there are still days I cry 46 years out. And I don't cry because it hurts so bad. I cry because I still love so deeply. I still love my mama. And there are days I still remember my mama and what she did for me and what she imprinted me with. And I crave that she got to see my kids and now her great grandkids, but she did not get to see them. And so when I see them doing some crazy nutsy stuff, I say, God, my mom would have loved that. And sometimes that brings a tear to my eye, but it's not a tear of, oh my God, I'm beat up. It's just that, man, she would have loved that. And I just long for her to get to see it. So grief, it's not a destination. And I teach fervently, you don't get over it, you learn to live with it. Koi will never get over leaving her homeland. I don't care how long she lives in America. You won't. You're going to miss your mom. You're going to miss your family. And even if you go back, you're going to miss the years you've missed. I don't care how you shape it, folk. That's part of the journey. And she's going to learn how to live with it. And we all going to learn how to live with it. And if we can use that to motivate us to do better. My sacred writings say, love thy neighbor as thyself. If it teaches me how to love a little better, then my living won't be in vain. I'll be a little better and you'll be a little better and everybody will be a little better.
Wow. Thank you so much. This is so powerful. Thank you everyone who's been here. I just want to say, Reverend Freeman, Kelsey, Koi, you're all in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. A small, one geographic pinhole in our world. And here we come together in this space, and it's like humanity is kind of like, you feel it coming in across this one. And how many more of you are there in Pittsburgh, in Pennsylvania, in the United States? I mean, we're all going through, and just really powerful. And I think we should I would love everyone in the chat here to share your gratitude for these incredible guests, and anything you took away.
Thank
and
you all.
I would love to close this out, Koi, if you wouldn't mind. We would love to have this, everyone. I mean, a special opportunity. Let's have the future best musician in America. Forget Song of the Year in Vietnam. We're going Song of the Year in America. Koi, would you play live for us?
Oh, yes. I would love to play a song. Yeah. This song's called Just Be Patient. Mm-hmm. Before you came, I dreamt of you. You, with your power to make wrongs right. For you, I put myself on the line. For you, I was prepared to do time. All around, ghosts and demons, serpents, snakes, and deadly creatures wanna get me, kill me, burn me.
once were the hope of my life. You once were the hope of my life. I saw your halo shining bright. Then you gave me some advice. Just be patient. 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 You once were the hope of my life. Now I'm hopeless.
Thank you, Coy. Thank you, everyone who's been here at the session. Reverend Freeman, Kelsey, Coy. Thank you to my colleague Andy Engel. Thank you to all of you, again, to each of you who for whom we're doing this, to be together and to actually create some energy, some kind of energy, harmonic energy that we can send out into the world to both have patience and, as you kind of exhibited, Coy, to, move our world toward where we don't have, take something and not have that patience by moving forward with this action and to something better. And you're all doing that in this space today. So as we close every session, let's maybe unmute ourselves for 1 second and all simultaneously just share the word love. You can sing it out. We can sing it together, and maybe that will sound good.
Mm.
3, 2, 1. Unmute to the love.
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 Love. Love.
Love.